It's called the base. I don't know.
All right, you're good to go.
The super base. All right, we're gonna start. We are here Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022, 7 o'clock, regular city council meeting. The agenda is posted. We have everyone present. Our prayer thought will be offered by Council Member Nilsson, which will be followed by the pledge.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful for this day. We're grateful for the chance we have to come and convene together to discuss the needs of the city, and we ask you to bless us with guidance and wisdom as we do so, that we may make the best decisions for the community. We're grateful for the moisture that we've received, and we ask you to continue to bless us with more. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. We have, if everyone has had the chance to review the consent agenda and minutes from both the February 8th and then the special meeting on February 10th. If there's any corrections, I did not see any, but I didn't read it super in depth this time around either. If not, we would take a motion to approve that.
I will make a motion that we approve the Tuesday, February 22nd agenda and the council meeting minutes from the Tuesday, February 8th meeting and
Thursday, February 10th.
Thursday, February 10th meeting minutes.
I'll second that.
All right, the motion by Councilmember Bowers and a second by Councilmember Gosser. All in favor?
Aye.
That's everyone. Any conflicts of interest for tonight's agenda? None. Okay, public comment. If you're here to comment to anything that's not on the agenda, we'll give you a few minutes and you can do that if there's anybody that would like to do that. Good. Okay. Reports. Start with me. What do I have? There's a couple things. Oh, so I talked to the Lieutenant Governor again about the SITLA stuff. And there's not much movement happening there as far as that goes. Like, it sounds like they're working on things. I also talked to Dave, you're the director of SITLA, and he, I mean, didn't want to share a bunch of information, but kind of said that they are looking at changing some things around, and I just asked him to keep us informed and let us be part of the process, and we'll see how that kind of plays out. Nothing really of much detail other than I spoke to both of them a little bit about it.
I did hear that Mike Lee might be getting involved in that too.
I've talked to his office as well. It's been a few weeks, but they were planning on getting involved. So we'll see what actually happens. They asked for a map of what we would suggest. And I'm like, well, we're not really suggesting anything. We're just saying, let's not do it.
Did Phil?
Phil did send a map with an email and just kind of like, if you're going to do this, would prefer that this happen. And
I've also heard that Commissioner Bruce Adams has also drafted a map for him. So
yeah. So there's people involved. Phil's map kind of and just went around blending a little bit to kind of, I guess, protect that space a little bit, but who knows what will actually happen and when things will happen, because I haven't seen anything
Was that
through
his map? That
Phil.
David showed me?
Yeah,
Nice.
that was Phil's map. So a little bit of an update, but not much information there, I guess. I think that that's all for me as far as any report goes. Does anybody from the city council have anything to report?
Let me give an update on the museum, the historical museum.
Well, again, they're progressing. They've got a grant for the architecture and
that was huge.
the engineering. So they're working on getting the RFP out for that. And they're working on getting a grant from the CIB to actually build the museum and stuff. They're moving quick.
I was happy to see him get that first grant because that's a huge step forward for CIB and the other next step. So
I've been pretty impressed with how persistent they've been. And see if they get it done.
Cool. Anything else from the council? Good. All right, Dave, what report do you got for us?
Pretty much most everything on the project status report we're talking about in some form or another on the agenda tonight. So I really don't have anything to add unless there's specific questions.
I don't have any.
you're on the agenda too. So.
Okay, anything else? Okay. Kim Palmer, Finance.
Evening. The financial report is in the packet. If you have any questions for me, if you want to come to that. And losing my voice. Scary.
Oh, I can't find it.
Everything looks good. Budgets are in line. I'm working on moving this year's budget over to next year's and start making those adjustments in the next couple of weeks. So we started that process. I'm excited.
Looks like tourism's maybe up with the sales tax and room tax increases.
A little bit.
It would be great to know what period. It would be so good because I know our winter was not good.
They're all over the place. When I get that report, some of it is from November through January. Some of it is just January. Some of it is December and January.
They don't all come
Well,
in.
third
They're not
quarter-
all the same. It depends on what time of the month you file.
Fourth quarter would have. We do quarterly, so fourth quarter would have just been paid. So I guess that this wouldn't really reflect that.
No, it looks good.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Okay,
Especially sales tax.
All those Amazon shops.
any money questions for Kim?
Sadly, that's partly true.
It really is.
All right, Terry, Public Works.
Righty, Mayor and Council, it's been a little bit since I did a UAMPS report, so I thought I would report. Were you guys able to read what I had? I mean, I don't want to take too long. We have a pretty busy agenda, but one of the big buzzes around right now is the Boardman to Hemingway transmission agreement stuff that's happening between Pacific Core and Idaho Power Company and Bonneville Power Association. But if you looked at the Pacific Core press release that I attached, under key elements, the big one is Idaho Power will acquire an ownership interest in Pacific Core transmission lines and other equipment between Eastern Idaho and the Four Corners substation in Northwest New Mexico. And B2H and those acquisitions amplify Idaho Power's connections to key energy markets that will help the company meet rapidly growing customer demand. So these changes in the transmission positively affect us as a power company, and specifically with the carbon-free power project, because it will make it easier for partners on that project to come in from the Pacific Northwest. But it just helps us in a lot of ways too, really, to free up transmission from Central Oregon all the way to the Four Corners substation. So, and we're on that path. And then the carbon-free power project, it's just kind of moving along on schedule. We've got, the next steps we're looking for really are the the class 3 cost estimate, and then the combined licensing agreement on the project itself, and those are just moving along on schedule, so not a lot to update there. Subscription, there's several entities who have signed letters of intent and plan to enter the project, and really the transmission has been the stumbling point for them, because they are located in the Pacific Northwest. And so this Boardman to Hemingway project is supposed to be completed late 2026 or soon thereafter. And so well before project delivery on the carbon-free project. So that's pretty good news. And then I threw a little blurb about this ICUA, Idaho Consumer Owned Utilities Association. So that's the thing that started off with Idaho, and now it's, they have Alaska, wherever, quite a few states around in the Intermountain West. And it's an opportunity for sophomores this year, maybe juniors too, to put some type of an application together that would be at least composed of an essay and some information. And then our power board, or whoever council designates, could select one student, and then, so Blanding City Power hasn't planned to send a student and pay for all the costs, but UAMPS is sending 10. And so there's a possibility that we could select a student, and then the UAMPS selection committee would send them up there. And it's a weekend, Boise or somewhere, wherever Idaho College is, maybe south of Boise a little, and go to it's more of a leadership thing with a public power component and all that. So
When does that happen?
when does it?
Yeah, like
It's
what's
June. I
deadlines?
mean, so we'd get, so I was hoping to have more information. I still don't have it.
Okay.
But, that application process would be the end of this school year, and then that event happens sometime in June. So I just wanted to kind of throw it out so you guys would be aware of it, and then I can get that information to the school and everything, and make sure that the students have that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. It's really cool.
Any questions? Awesome.
All right, discussion items. The first one is the commercial development agreement. Pratt.
All right, you guys have that all in front of you. This was asked to be put on the agenda, so we went over a couple of things. Is there any questions or comments that you want me to start with or address first?
Well, I'll just say real quick that I am the one that put this on the agenda. Katie probably remembers, but Logan Shumway pushed to do a residential development agreement. And when we got done with that, we all made the decision that we would start the discussions on a commercial residential agreement. And then it just never got back on the agenda. We went through all the changes. So now we're in a position where we have commercial developers coming forward and needing some assistance. And so I think it's a good time to address this again and see if we can come up with something that applies to them as well.
Where did y'all come up with like the numbers? Like, are we like going off of someone else's? Does it just pull some like?
So regarding the guiding policy, just for a reminder, this is just a draft, so you can
Right.
scribble, erase, whatever you want all over that, doesn't matter. I took a CRA, so a community reinvestment template, of how they would grade the way they were going to give their tax deferment policies. And those are typically a cost score, right? So they're much higher numbers, much higher level. So I took it, brought it down to numbers that might reflect Blanding properties a lot more closely. And then we added, Dave and I went over it and added a few other things like infrastructure and return on investment, how quickly would we make our money back and things of that nature. So the cities that I got a lot of the information from was Ogden, Spanish Fork, Nephi, and Eagle Mountain were for the cities that I researched. They're all a little bigger, but they're all newer developments. And so they've been implementing, things like this a lot more recently than some of the older cities in Utah. So one of the thoughts was with this, if we had some type of a guiding policy And again, this is however you guys like to set that up. We could have a committee, it could be admin that grades it, administration that grades it, it could be just council. But you could grade the project, and then that would allow us to say, hey, you got 10 or a 5 or 30, and this would mean you can talk to council, we will take it to council. It doesn't mean that they're getting money, it just means that that project will be brought to council and you guys could review it and say, yeah, we're willing to do X, Y, or Z. Under composite scores, that's just like an idea of like, if they're that high, they'd be able to get those things. If they're in the 20 to 11 range, they might be maxed out at, $4,000 of, assistance. And then if they're under 10, they wouldn't be able to even discuss it. The project wouldn't qualify. So the guiding policy would give the ability for the project to be graded and reviewed. And then we would build this into the commercial development agreement, based on X, Y, or Z. We would build that into the agreement itself. But it would be pretty similar. The commercial agreement would be pretty similar to the residential in the sense that you typically aren't paying for connection fees or things of that nature. You're paying for the infrastructure to be ran or extended to a property type scenario.
So if I can just add to what Pratt's saying here, it's interesting that Pratt had put this together because when we were talking about this, I said, hey, why don't you look and see what I put together for another city that I worked for? And it was almost the identical kind of concept. So when I was in Saratoga Springs, one of the issues they were really having was lots of fast development. And sometimes the city council would see a project and one council member would really like a project and push for it. And they would do some sort of reimbursement. And then there was another project that came and another council member didn't like that project. And then what would happen is it was just really subjective. So like this project over here that didn't get funded sometimes was actually a more beneficial project for the city. And so what I did there was put together something almost identical to this. And it gave the whole council as a whole to kind of say, oh, okay, here's the return on investment. Here's the number of employees that they're bringing. And also gave the developers, because the developers were getting really frustrated because it just seems so subjective, whatever the council decided to discuss incentives or not discuss incentives. And after implementing something like this, that's when I was able to secure Costco and some of these other huge businesses with half the incentives that our neighboring city of Lehigh was offering, because it helped the council all be on the same page and help communicate more clearly to developers why they would not incentivize something. And so it's just a nice guide. Like he said, this does not hold the council anything. One thing I really like that Pratt added is he said, here, if you're the bottom tier, it's not going to go, the council basically doesn't want it to be brought to discussion, right? Administration can clearly say, hey, look, you're not meeting the marks here. You can still go talk to council members if you want, but this is probably what they're going to say based on this. The mid tier, I like what he has here, because this is something I didn't do in my prior one. He's saying, okay, well, the council is willing to talk incentives to you, but at a cap up to this amount, because you're bringing stuff in, but it's not a huge bang for the buck. And then the last one is just kind of open. If the count, say, I'm just making this up, say Costco comes in to Blanding of all places, and you're like, well, that's going to bring $1 million a year. So we're willing to, talk incentives over a longer period of time, just to give you kind of a drastic examples of how that would be. So this really leaves it open for a variety of types of businesses and levels. And anyways, Pratt did an awesome job putting it together. So.
And then just real quick, if you look at the that second paragraph under background, those were the 4 commonalities that every city had in place as well. So some of that just gives you guys some ideas of what you can and can't do and what would be helpful. But a budget with like a max amount. So say you say we're going to only have $30,000 available per year, but the most you can get is 12. So that one person can't come in and take all 30. If you could help 3 businesses with $10,000, that might be more beneficial or whatever. But a designated zone or road. So for us, that might be just Highway 191, but this was all just put together to give you guys an idea of what to discuss,
How it could
how
function.
it could function, and then it guides me in writing and preparing the commercial development agreement as a whole of things that have to be in play.
The benefit
as
of this
well.
is you don't have to have a CRA. This is a guiding policy that doesn't require a CRA. Depending on state legislation and how that goes with what the state allows for incentives, which I've been very keeping abreast on and up to speed on, that could influence what cities can do,
It's
but
kind of all changing too.
it is, but I've been fighting very hard, particularly for our unique scenario here in Blanding, to not have restrictions on incentives like they're trying to do for some of the northern cities. And so, but yeah, that's one of the big benefits is you don't have to have a CRA in place because you've got a great policy in place and it can be created however you like. So.
And you can change the name if you don't like the name guiding policy, it could just be rubric or something if you don't like the word policy, so.
So this isn't actually what I was thinking. Our residential agreement is a little more simple, which I think is not bad. But I think you've made something that could be complicated very simple here, and I really like that. One thing I would recommend that we add as we consider this is that if they're willing to take on a blighted building in the city, that move them up or add a rating, an additional score for them.
Yeah, that could maybe even go under growth and potential
Yeah.
category, blighted buildings.
And I like the idea. What we did with the residential agreement is we set a maximum of $100,000 a year with a maximum of, I think it's up to $14,000 if I remember if they did all the utilities.
It's a maximum of 7,500 per unit.
Oh,
Yeah, so if they did 3 units, so they could get,
Well, what it is it's half of their costs up to 7,500 per
Right,
unit.
right.
So.
So-
The other thing I was going to say budgetarily, the benefit of this and the residential one is, so you want to have the agreement beforehand, before the work goes into place. And then they have to give the city notice, and this would be spelled out in their development agreement, when they're intending to get that reimbursement, so that we as a city could budget for it in the upcoming budget. It wouldn't necessarily be immediate. They'd have to notify us so that we could then budget for it. Because if we had 12 agreements out there and all of a sudden they all wanted to cash in the same month, we'd be in trouble. But this would, we could set up the agreement so we could budget and plan ahead, have the agreement set up that way.
and we can have a development agreement without a guiding policy as well. This was just an idea of like what could be
Good point.
to help.
Good point.
well, I personally am pro economic development, and I like the idea of incentivizing and helping businesses choose to come to Blanding when they could choose possibly other places. We're in a position now where we've got a business that's asking us for some type of financial incentive. And I think they're going to provide a good service to the city. And my concern is I don't think they're going to be the first. I think we're going to have more, and we need to know that we're treating businesses the same as they come in. And so I like the idea of putting together a simple policy that helps us make those decisions so we're not picking and choosing.
It makes it less arbitrary and subjective.
Yeah. And it allows us to do something we've told a lot of people no,
Mhm.
because there was nothing. There was
Yeah,
no,
and
there
when
was
you have this,
nothing
you
to
can
offer.
clearly show them, hey, this is why you're really only scoring around an 8 when said you can, for anything, you need at least 11, even though scoring is still kind of subjective to some degree, but it gives us a baseline for discussion.
And let me clarify that. I don't think we've told a lot of people no. I think we just haven't had an option for people when maybe they've come asked, what can you do to help me start my business? Or what can you do if I do this? We just didn't have options for them at the time. So,
Yeah, I thought you said no,
right.
you've never said yes. Never been able to say yes.
Well, we didn't have
We've been
anything to
able to say
offer.
And which was similar with the residential agreement. And we see how many homes are going in, which is great for our entire city. So I think that residential agreement has helped with that
Is
as well.
this something that will help Lloyd and Josh today?
Yeah. As soon as we
We
implement
won't
it.
pass it today, so I mean, the idea, I think the idea there is good.
Yeah, so what we can do is take this, put it together, and then bring it to the council for approval. And then obviously, like any other business, we would say, okay, where, based on what they're proposing, where do they come in and meet these marks? And then that'll give the council perspective if you want to enter a development agreement with Sunrise Outfitters, just like any other business that we may be approached by.
And I would add that, I mean, just my thoughts are, I want to make it so we can help. How do I say this if I'm not saying it right? Help the businesses that are going to come to Blanding. Like, I don't think we need to be helping, kind of like you mentioned, like the big stuff that maybe someday will come. I think we could change that if that ever were to happen, but I think we make it simple enough that we're helping the businesses that are, you know, they want to start, they've made an investment, they've done things, they have X, Y, and Z done. They just need a little bit of help versus the businesses that are like, I thought of this idea, and if the city could build me a building and do this for me, then I'll start a business. Like, I think we're kind of two different ones there. I think we help the ones that are really making an effort, and specifically in Blanding is what I think we could do. So if we can make this work for that, I think.
Maybe simplify the numbers a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know the numbers. Like, I'm not the number.
That's what I was gonna ask you. Do you guys have any just gut reactions to, oh, I don't like this, I don't like this, or I do like this? Because if not, what we'll do is we'll just kind of, well, if you do and if you don't, we'll go back, take feedback, refine it a little bit and bring it back for approval as an official policy.
And you're welcome to send emails too,
That's true.
over the next 10 days.
But we can't call you.
You can call, text, whatever.
I do think this may be a little aggressive to start with. I do think there are some small, I think for Josh's business, actually, these numbers are probably good, but I think there may be some smaller businesses. Right now, most of the people who start businesses are local entrepreneurs, and
Yeah,
that's what we want to push, is what Mayor said. So I'm just thinking the property value specifically, that may be a little high.
that
One area.
That one I actually looked at this morning. The $1 million. I meant to go back. So I'd actually asked Red Mechanical, like their sales, not their sales tax, their property tax, because it's a similar metal building in a commercial area. I never got the number back. So
Well, and what we could do is you may, and that's part of why there's different categories, because maybe say a local business may get a 1 in revenue and tax sales, but hey, they're creating 15 new full-time jobs. And so that's why is you have a few different categories. Well, maybe they don't score so high here, but they're gonna, if they're scoring high or at least mid in the other areas, they're still gonna be sitting well. And maybe the other thing based on local, maybe incentives for like local business looks a little bit different. Because maybe there's, like you were talking about the blighted, that's why I liked that is maybe there's some points for maybe we just make it its own category. If you're renovating blighted buildings or doing something to beautify the area, maybe there's points for that. Because sometimes that's hard to incentivize alone. But again, that would be one category amongst a few that we would evaluate, so.
Does this apply only to new businesses, or if you've got an existing business that wants to maybe expand and bring in more
It's
jobs?
totally up to you guys. If that's something you'd want, that's something.
I mean, the way this is designed right now, it's for new, because it's going to be, extending infrastructure. That's usually where the money, you're going to be giving them the money back as an extended infrastructure. If you're adding on to building, the utilities already there. But yeah, we can, that's what's nice is that this is just really a blank canvas that we're trying to fill in, so we can do whatever we need to.
Yeah, go ahead.
These guys have been coming here for 2 months trying to get permission to go ahead, asking for help. Does this help them right now? Can we help them right now?
We don't even have completed applications from them to know the exact numbers of what we would reimburse right now anyway. So we're still working with them on, they've been working on that and they're almost there, but.
So basically,
So we're trying to do this simultaneously. While they're getting in their application, we're trying to get this
But
simultaneous.
I mean, don't they have to pay the money up front anyway, and then we would reimburse them? So I don't think are we
that's the-
holding
yeah,
us to
you
a
do.
project?
That's the concept here.
Right. Because does it allow you to have an asset for your bank loans?
No.
If we have this program in place?
No, but we don't even know what we're doing with the gas situation.
So that's holding you up, but not us not this program is not holding you up. It's what to do with the current utilities.
We can move forward with most utilities, but the gas situation needs to be resolved so we can move forward.
So what,
That's addressed
and Josh,
in the
correct me, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, what they're looking for is would a program like this, that the council would approve a development agreement, do reimbursements on the gas situation? If they cover those costs up front, is this council willing to reimburse that? I think that's what they're looking for. But simultaneously, what staff still needs is all those elements in their application to be completed, so we can do a full review and actually give them hard dollars for those things. So we have rough
Permit
estimates.
application or what application? Oh,
Yeah, Terry,
The building
exactly, that's correct, right? Yeah, we just need that to be completed, or else we don't even know the hard numbers till that's all completed. So we're trying to do it all simultaneously and see what we can come up with. And look, this, like we said, this is a guiding. So if the council says, well, we don't got this in place, we want to do this, I mean, you're at liberty to do that. We just thought it'd be good to get something in place and try to do that simultaneously while they're still working on things.
Mayor, Kim had a question a minute ago. I don't know if she's still.
I haven't been a part of this. I was out a couple of days last weekend, so I haven't had much time to discuss the stuff that Pratt put together. It looks good, but my question or advice or concern or whatever would be the budget side of that, is that you'll want to, like we did with the residential, is we set a limit in each one of those funds of what we were going to share or provide or reimburse. We set those limits, and if you was to do that before the end of this fiscal year, we would need to go and amend the budget and make those changes, and that will all be taken care of. We'll need to look at some of those numbers. What do we have in there, and how much do we really want to pull out? Just my comment.
And I think that's kind of where Pratt is making the recommendation in the mid-tier. He's saying in the mid-tier, we would have like a set cap in the policy. If you rate between this, there's a specific cap. If you're between a 30 and a 21, it can still adhere to that cap in the policy, or you can go more if you wanted as a council, say, hey, well, this is a big investment. We want to reimburse a little bit more in this situation because they scored so high. So that kind of is incorporated, at least in that mid-tier portion, to try and accommodate for the budget side of it.
So for this first part, we're dealing with this agreement or this,
Recommended policy.
this policy. Is there any other guidance would want to give specifically to this before we address the request?
Could you send just this out to the council? Maybe we could make changes and then next meeting possibly have something we can vote on?
Yeah, I can have you this and a commercial development draft pretty quickly by like
That's
Monday or
okay
Tuesday.
with the rest of the
so-
council.
So maybe, yeah, the council provide individual feedback. I think the only caveat I would say is if we're finding like conflicting feedback on certain categories or something, which I don't think, I mean, it seems like you guys have a good grasp on this and how it functions, but the hope is to have some policy to you to approve next council meeting. But if we find in feedback, there's a lot of conflicting, we may say, it might be better to bring it back for discussion so council can hear each other out on their feedback. So does that sound okay to you?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do that then for sure.
Is there any,
Which means then by possibly, hopefully, preferably by next council meeting, you would at least have some direction on where the council's going, and we'd have to then decide at that time what our budget would be, and the council, of course, is going to have to get 3 votes to approve it, but you'll at least have some direction.
yeah, and we can shape this however we want really. And I think it's good to have it. I think sometimes, I mean, and I'm glad that these are separate things because I don't want to create this commercial development agreement specifically around one project, and that's not what they're asking us to do either.
Sure.
But
So
this
we
is
want to
something-
make sure that it fits a good amount of people versus one person.
Right, very similar to some of the airport stuff we were working with. We wanted,
Right.
we had one specific project come to mind and we realized, hey, we needed to look at the whole picture, and that's kind of what we're doing here.
Any other, I guess, guidance we want to give Pratt and staff for this specifically
I'd
tonight?
like to schedule a meeting with you. You can
Okay,
tell me what we got.
sounds good.
Because I look at this and I go, what's that?
Yeah,
Okay, we'll talk after.
Maybe come up with like a couple scenarios that you can show them
Okay,
to how.
And I do just have some, for me personally, I have some basic changes to some of these numbers. I do think it's a little
Yeah.
aggressive, but that's it. And then,
We think this is a positive thing. This is good, so.
yeah, feedback.
and so we need to decide on these first 4 concepts that you've mentioned in here. That's something council needs to,
You don't.
Well, those are like the guiding
you want to
principles.
designate a
Those are just,
zone.
those are things that people always have. You don't have to zone it, just like, for example, I can't, Eagle Mountain had like, it was like Turner or Tanner Road. It was like everything south of Tanner Road was involved, everything a quarter mile north. They were real specific. That's why I
it's
say
kind of a way of doing a CRA without actually doing one.
Yeah, like
Basically, they're saying.
90% of our commercial districts
just
on
look it up.
Highway
we're
191.
not big enough.
But you
Yeah,
could say
I mean-
191, just the commercial districts, you could, because
Yeah.
that's, I don't know, I mean, it just depends if, I don't know how hard it is with zoning, but like, say there's a piece right next to commercial that someone buys and wants to rezone it to commercial and it works and we have that in place. We don't want to exclude them because we didn't think of that, right? We want to kind of have a few of those scenarios in place.
So some of the reason too is, say, Blinding City, as a council, you guys are like, we want to focus all of our commercial and incentivizing all of our commercial right on Main Street here, right? So then in something like this, you may say, hey, right now, make the parameters for the incentive just for Main Street. And then maybe 3 years from now, you say, okay, now let's adjust the policy. We want to put more focus on the outskirts. So that's why some cities do it, is if they're trying to direct commercial development in a specific area, they'll identify that. But that's up to you. You can leave it for the whole city or for specific areas.
I think we should go towards the blighted areas of business of Main Street. I mean, how many empty buildings do we have?
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree. Yeah.
And we've talked about what we can do, and I mean, like, realistically, we can't do anything unless we have ways to help make other people want to do something.
Brett and I will talk about the blighted thing, because like there'll be some, like the blighted category might mean nothing to a brand new business that's coming in. That's maybe like a big chain or something. I'm trying to think of an example. Whereas the new growth would apply to that one, but a blighted one to someone that wants to come in and revamp the buildings, but then they're not going to get points on the growth and potential area. So we'll talk about how
We
that
might get more
dynamic
points
works for
from,
that
like-
category.
More points for using a blighted building.
Right, or something
Or
like
for
that.
razzing the building and starting over.
Either
Yeah,
way,
that's
yeah,
true.
no,
Yeah, I
either
mean,
way,
yeah.
Either way. I
But
mean,
still, it's a
Yeah.
blighted building, so
I
that's still
mean,
qualified.
The best thing that happened was Stars is going off the corner and there's a building you can stand to look at there.
Yeah,
I think that's.
No, we just got 5 more, 6 more. But we do need to come up with a set budget and then a max per developer.
On at least this point.
And really, the only reasons why we would need that is, I mean, I guess there's more than just the only reason, but you got to know where your limits are, but also you want to make it so you can benefit the most amount of people. with-
So like these top tier ones, how he kind of has it said is, if they're in the mid tier, you're gonna have set limits. But in the top tier, it leaves it to the discretion of the council if they want to go above that limit. So it doesn't pin you down to only that limit. You can look at the whole picture, talk to the finance director and say, hey, is this feasible to incentivize it at $9,000 a year more than the 7? But that would leave it to your discretion. So, and that's what I liked about how Pratt had structured this, because I hadn't thought of that or seen that before. So I liked that.
Well, as it gets going, I mean, it might be used once or twice
Exactly.
until people are like, oh, we can do this. And then after that,
Yeah.
we're really going to need to have that budget.
Well, and a lot of the times, like, for example, I know it was a high growth city, but in Saratoga, we were willing to come to the table a lot more for Costco, because once we got that huge anchor, it was going to bring other stuff around, which is what it did. But, you know, the businesses that came in after it as the city, this council's going to say, well, we're not as interested in incentivizing you as much because we already got that big anchor. It's kind of the economic development game, getting that first one in, you're willing to incentivize them more. And so that's why that top tier one, it's good to leave to your discretion. So.
Okay.
Well, I don't think we should dismiss the idea of giving it to current businesses either.
I've heard complaints in the past
Yeah.
from, and not just where I work, but other businesses that have been here for years. And I mean, and things have been in the past to incentivize new business. And I get that, but they do things that hurt our business, or they don't, but nothing is done to promote the businesses that are already here.
You may want to look at even maybe it's a companion policy with this. So like CDBG grants and stuff, or that idea of a lot of those is specific to like blighted buildings or existing businesses. Maybe the council, I'm not saying you should do this, I'm just throwing up ideas. Maybe the council has a different program where every year you set aside 30 grand and you grant anywhere between 1 and 20 businesses to, upgrade the paint on their building or something like that. That almost could be like a separate program or something that you do. And I've done something similar like that in another city, a little different, but anyways, just a different way. Because maybe what you're saying, I feel like is a little different than incentivizing new business, if that makes
But I
sense.
do think if a
But
current
But
business wanted
expanding
to
business.
expand,
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh,
Yeah,
I think they should be allowed into this
yeah,
program.
not just painting the building, but
I like.
You're
that
talking
idea.
expansion, but
it's something to bring in more jobs and
right.
more.
Yeah.
But it is good to look at the whole, like maybe there's an existing business and for years we've been saying, man, if they just paint their building, it would do a wonder on it. Maybe that's a little bit separate than someone that's expanding or bringing in something new, so.
Well, and the thing we have to remember about current businesses is they've been paying into the infrastructure for years, and they've been paying those utilities that have helped Blanding City have revenue to do the things that we do. And that's part of why we charge the fees we charge to hook up to utilities, is because we have this infrastructure thanks to people paying into that infrastructure for years and years.
There's lots of different approaches to it, that's for sure. And we want to be, and I think we want to be supportive of all businesses, honestly. I mean,
Right.
at what
There's
extent,
retention.
like, what do you
and
do
bringing
to
in
make
new
that happen? I
businesses.
think being supportive and being the support is kind of different things, but I think there's things we could work on.
Yeah, I think retention is equally as important as incentivizing new businesses. And I think that's, if I'm hearing council right, that's what I'm hearing. So Brent, you feel like you got direction?
Yeah, I've got notes. We're good. We'll make sure that we get that, and then sounds like we'll have a few discussions, and then I'll have something for you next week that you can also view as well.
And sorry, just real quick regarding his last comment, the state gives grants for economic development. And that grant money went to San Juan County this year, or I think they have done that for the last 2 years. Instead of just doing a statewide, they give to San Juan County. We might could ask them if they'll do it per city.
We can ask, the way that works is the counties and the state used to have the BEAR grant, which was business expansion and retention, the revolving loan fund. There are 4 or 5 programs, they nixed 4 of them. And then the county, they said, seeing how you're administering those funds already, this will be a lot easier if we give you X amount of money and then you have a board, which I sit on that board, to do that, in which they've applied and were awarded.
The state
funds
does
from
it
that
to the
too, but-
county, so they don't have to deal with as much.
Right, no, but I
But
really
there's
wonder if we asked
something
the
in-
state if they would allow the city to have a port, just like TRT tax, to
Yeah,
have a portion of that so that it can be, we can ensure that that money is used by local blinding businesses. That might not be a bad
Well,
idea. Anyway.
A lot of it's more of who you know versus what you know, and
100%.
there's so many programs that are specific to, like, it doesn't say that they're for blinding, but they basically say they're for blinding, like, but we don't know about them just because it's the people that we don't
And that's
necessarily
something
know.
we
So
Talk to our local legislators about passing legislation to be structured, kind of like you're saying with the TRT. That's one way to do it, which forces the state to minister it in certain ways.
yeah, there's a new program within the governor's office, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's specific for like rural communities, and it's not necessarily for like economic development, but it's
You can support. it. That's
Yeah,
what you're
yeah,
saying.
and they have grants, like the one that is coming up in March is a mental health grant. So it's like for anybody that's providing any kind of mental health service. And they have several different ones. It's not just
Yeah.
limited to one thing, but it's specific to areas like this. So
Well, to your point, Cheryl, there might be times they've probably never had a city this size be prepared enough to even ask, which we would be. And that might be
Very true.
impressive enough where they say, yeah, we can carve out, especially we have someone on the legislative team to say they've got the ability to do it, so I don't think it hurts to ask and try to get that ball moving at all. So
Totally agree. And I love that they gave it to the county in the first place. I think that's better than the state giving those funds out, but it would be even better if they would allow the individual cities to do it
yeah.
and split it, in my
Almost,
opinion.
they should allocate so much to the city, and let them do it.
It does seem that way.
I think. on
Did Utah League of Cities, I wonder if they're the ones that pushed for the TRT for the city specific.
I don't,
Yeah.
I can ask Natalie because she has a brief. I usually get those emails, but I don't remember seeing something that
I
was,
feel like
the
I've,
legislator didn't say exactly who it was, but just usually says the representative that's pushing for it, so. But I can get that answer quickly.
I feel like I've heard something
Maybe we
about
could
it, but I don't
maybe we could just
remember
approach the Utah Development or Utah Economic Development Committee that gets those funds from the state and ask them if they'll give us our portion. And if they won't, then we'll go to the Utah League of Cities.
We good there with that first one?
Good work on that, Brad. Thank you.
Okay, so our next one is the Sunrise Outfitting request, and that's under Pratt as well.
Okay. Easy enough. We'll just switch gears here. All right. Okay, similar discussion here. We're going to talk more about one project in town that's specific and it's asked for assistance. The one thing that we wanted to make clear on the budget impact, that's just an estimate. So that's not like a diehard true and fast number in terms of revenue to tax, but it's just an estimate on what we think that much revenue would bring back in sales tax directly to the city. And
Based on what they identified in the.
Kim and Dave can break those numbers down more, but in essence, we get 25%, right? Because we get our 50% of the sales tax generated because it goes to the state and comes back through different channels, but we don't get all of it back. So if you're wondering where those numbers came from, that's.
Yeah, the state has a very specific calculation, and that's where that 2,800 out of. So basically, for $85,000 in a year that a business might generate in sales tax, we get 2,800, and that's if all their sales are, because services aren't taxed on the sales tax. So if a certain service, but like a rental of ATV might be taxed, but not necessarily. Maybe guiding might not be taxed because that's a service or something, but if everything that they did was completely taxed and we got a return on it, this is what it would be.
Yeah, so rough estimate. You guys got that? Okay. You'll see under departments, just about everyone kind of went through this, but the important thing here that I think the council and the staff are, seeing eye to eye on is that we have someone that's requesting, they're requesting a need, and the recommendation made was to look at other options other than waiving the impact fees and the connection fees. And so for an example of that, it's $5,300 for the connection and impact fees total. So if you look at that number, it's not like a giant number by any means. Now, the lines extending, that's where that number can jump up higher because you have to have a licensed contractor to dig the trench, to connect the pipes, things of that nature. Where the gas line is on that property, it would either have to be torpedoed, or as they mentioned, I think twice, they would have to rip out quite a bit of cement and dig, and then that, triples the cost and things of that nature. So Terry has a couple different estimates that he's put together, but what you need to look at is one of the things, I guess, is that's $5,300 for the connection fees and the impact fees, and then from there it can go from roughly $12,000 to $25,000 depending on work and service. But, and then the one thing that we do need to correct at this time, the time of last Wednesday or Thursday when I was putting this together, Sunrise has put in their building permit. And so Brett Hosser, who's attending, he's at a conference right now. So when he's back, he'll be able to look at that and let us know. But that's what's key, because we need to see, we can see on the public works and the building department's terms, how far lines need to be ran, exactly what they're thinking of, and things of that nature. So when we say that we need to see those things, that's why, is they're looking to give you an exact estimate. But
So between Brent and Terry, they'll look at what they've submitted, make sure everything's there. If there's something missing, they'll say, hey, we still need X and Y, but it sounds like they've resubmitted it for staff to review.
so any additional questions or concerns with that,
I have a question, but well, maybe not. I'll wait for my question because it might not be relevant right now. Any other questions from y'all?
So what you're recommending is that we wait until we put together, or if we approve this community
Commercial development.
Yeah,
commercial development
CDA.
agreement, thank you. Until we see if we approve that next meeting, and then that will help determine what we can do here.
yeah, so on that last page of the recommendations, that's, I mean, I don't think I need to explain anymore. Yeah, that's that.
So
But again, you're welcome to say, like, as mentioned, you can do a back pay where if you want to approve it and do whatever, you're welcome to do that. That was just the recommendation as it ran through kind of all of our departments of, do you award it now? Do you want to wait till there's something in place? Do you want to,
And
we're just trying to get, it's rather new to all of us. And so we're trying to figure out the best scenario, but the recommendation to, have a budget in place helps everyone. And then to have a budget, or to not waive those connections and impact fees, because that's never been done, but to find other ways to help, like the torpedo and, things of that nature that might benefit them in different ways.
What if the cost was spread out on their monthly bill? They we spread that out and they pay that bill in.
that would go into a development agreement.
And that would potentially be something we would do under the development agreement. And that is potentially something that we could talk about. Maybe at the last meeting, we kind of had an idea of what you guys are requesting, but at the rest of the meetings, we had no idea what you were asking for. And so that's part of why, how do you make a decision when we don't know bottom line? Like as an entity, like we've been discussing for over a year, just as an example, the sprinkling system at the wellness center, and we can't come together because we can't figure out how much we're going to invest in that. And so it's impossible for us to say, yes, we're going to do something when the number could be $500 or the number could be $25,000. So that's really the holdup, is that you didn't come to us with a specific, for me anyway, you didn't come specific saying this is what we need. You didn't come prepared with that, as far as from what I've seen at the last.
Can I clarify? You guys can tell me if you're wrong. In their defense, from my understanding, the way that I was trying to present this, they wanted, the connections and those things waived. Okay. And we said, okay, we've never waived impact fees and connection fees. And they said, they're relatively new at this, but they were just asking for some form of assistance. And so that's where we said, okay, do we need to hurry and put a CDA together, whatever. And so they're learning the same way we are, but.
And that's why we had asked them to kind of put this together that they provided the last go around.
But that's why why it hasn't been quick, why we can't just say, yes, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I came to the city council over a year ago to start this project.
I recall you coming and asking us to waive restrooms
Right.
for your building.
I was trying to improve a building because that seems I mean, you guys all seem to like that, and it just totally got shut down. And so I went from a tiny project to a huge project.
The request that I saw before us was that you were gonna put in a small building and you didn't want to put bathrooms in. That was the request that I saw.
That's correct. And that's when
So-
we initiated the partnership with them to lease space out of the visitor center.
And we couldn't do that because it's
It's
state
state
building
law.
code. Like, we didn't even have control over that. So I do understand where you're coming from, that you've been working on this a long time. But as far as this,
Yeah,
It's
in that
not quick.
same vein,
It can't
right? Like you guys are the guinea pigs, so it's not, you might not think it's fair, it's not great, but most cities wouldn't be discussing this, you know what I mean? You could be honest about that. I think we have 2 or 3 options. I mean, they can pay, we can repay, they can kind of start and we can help, or they can pay for it themselves. But I think we're on the right path of trying to figure out a guiding policy for that CDA that's simplified and concise, that helps smaller local businesses as well as maybe a little bit larger and even an expanding existing business. And while that's frustrating, I mean, one of the things is they can't do anything until that building permit's done. I'm not, at liberty to say if Brett's going to approve that right off the bat or not, and that goes to Terry as well. So they do have like 23 pages of professionally engineered plans, so it'll probably be quicker than most people's, but that's where this is hard. And I understand you guys' frustration. So we have a council that's trying, you guys are trying, and I know it sounds like we're hitting heads, but I feel like we're moving in the right place, and in 3 weeks could possibly have a CDA in place to benefit someone. By then you could be moving dirt, pouring footers, and have an approved building permit. And
Moving dirt, you driven past their property?
oh, I'm talking footers. It's flat, but I'm giving generals. I don't know what they can do or not do in 3
I
weeks,
think
but
to Pratt's point, we're moving as fast as we can, given the constraints that we have. So we really are.
and I think Eric's point of, how do we help now? Like, I think we're helping now, and I know that I don't know, we can hold a special session or whatever, but I know I spent 10+ hours on this last week because I wanted to be professional and have something that didn't need a bunch of edits so that we could get it back in March and be done with it. So that's my goal, and I guess that's what I have to say.
Did you have a question or comment? Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
If you want him to stand, I'm happy to sit down.
It doesn't matter. We're not super overran here.
Go back to that budget that you guys were talking. I haven't seen what's laid down, so I have no idea. But one thing that I really think needs to be into it is new money coming to Blaney, or is it just money that circulates here in Blaney? Like our business will have people flying in from all over the world, which is totally new money that will come into Blaney and recirculate here in Blaney several times, instead of just having money turn over that's here or going to Cortez or Salt Lake or somewhere else. This will be bringing in new money. Second off, the biggest thing we need is, like we're saying, is get Preston to help us with the natural gas line. If we decide just to back off of this and Silly does his car wash, we're burying that natural gas line deeper. And that's really a mistake. You got a 2-inch gas line there that should be pulled. There's nothing that said we have to go through this and build that there. I got 8 acres I can build it on. You know what I mean? But that national gas line ought to be pulled. Whether we do it.
That was gonna be my next question is is this something that the city should be doing anyway? For example, 300 West.
Terry can
Enough
answer
said.
to some of that, but for their project specifically, the benefit they do have is that Super Splash Inc. did submit a building permit as well. And so even if they're adding on and not doing anything, I guess expansion is the right word there, they're expanding, it would be at their cost actually to run that line to the edge of their property and bring it up to code. So that would be a benefit to them as well.
Because we're talking laterals, right?
No, we're talking main
Or
lines.
is the main-
So why are we not running the main line?
On commercial development, we do not run main lines, the developers run main lines.
On residential, we do.
Well, no, Joe Hurst paid for all the gas down there. We've done quite a few gas extensions in existing lots, existing homes, just to expand our gas utility.
Right.
But on major subdivisions for residential development, commercial, developer pays all the costs to extend the main lines.
So did we do any of that work for the hospital?
Oh, that's been 17 years ago or something.
The new addition?
Hmm?
The new addition, the new Blue Mountain Hospital Clinic,
The
Oh,
UNHS.
UNHS building.
I
Sorry,
know, we didn't.
sorry, too many.
We didn't extend any gas mains for them.
They were already there.
Yeah.
So, but we at some point had run gas mains down 300 West
Yeah, the city paid to develop all 300 West
so that it
back
could grow.
early 2000s.
I
Yeah.
remember that.
It was a good job too.
It was good. It
So
was a good
there's,
decision.
if anyone doesn't, theirs is just like, it's like halfway ran up through like into Shelby's driving parking area. So that's, it doesn't need to be, I guess for them it'd be extended, but it's still a main line. And so that's why it's confusing. So the main line's there, they would just be extending it to their property.
So I think though, this discussion about that line, that's the intent of this, the CDA is saying, okay, developer, you know, you're building your building, you're responsible for carrying that line over to provide the gas, and then the council will do a reimbursement up to X
Who
number of dollars.
allowed a business to put,
That's what
Yards of
honestly.
cement.
cement or whatever it is, blacktop or whatever it is, over our main line? Who
You
allows
have to
that?
have that, right? You have to get in your drive, you have to ask extra property.
No, I know. Shouldn't we move the main line beyond where they're gonna put cement?
Well,
When, so
that,
that we're not.
okay, that brings up my point. We've got Shelby's business who's been there for years. He's got a gas line, he has a gas service. Then he can expand his business without extending the line to the corner, which would, because he can do a boundary adjustment. I don't think that's right.
No, he would have to extend the main line. That's what we're talking
No,
about.
Brett was saying on council meeting, he doesn't have to do anything because his is a boundary adjustment. Is that correct, Brett?
Well,
Brett's
Brett's
Terry
not in
decides
charge
on
of
that.
the
Utilities, so he's the wrong guy to ask. I can answer that question.
But that's what he was saying on our, when we were discussing the properties. He's like, Super Splash doesn't have to do anything because all he's doing is a boundary adjustment.
Then he was mistaken, is what Terry's saying.
Super Splash will have to extend the main line to the far end of their property if they want to pull a building permit to expand the car wash.
You're
And then
right,
that
you're
gets
right.
right
If they
next to your
don't do a
property.
building permit. that
So
does change.
this is a mute point. If we require Shelby to do what he needs to do, these guys don't have near as far to dig for theirs.
Correct. Yeah. Be all
So
there.
what often developers will do is they will work in conjunction together on some of that timing. So you bring up a good point, but that would be up to the developers to work in conjunction on that
Still.
timing.
Mayor,
And
can I speak for a minute?
yep,
Yes, that person.
So Mayor, there's been a little bit of confusion there. What I was talking about as far as the boundary adjustment goes is the land use requirements by the state. The state allows a boundary adjustment without having to do a subdivision like the Nelsons had to do because they bought a separate individual piece of property. That had nothing to do with the utility part of it. So that the land part, not having to do a subdivision is what I was talking about, that Mr. Grover has mentioned. That's dealing with the land, not with the utilities.
Okay.
Do you have is there anything else for Brett on this?
Um,
Well, no, is it a valid question? Ask why we put cement over the top of our main line that's not been extended? Why does the city not just extend it to, or why would we allow concrete to go over the top of a main?
Well, I think that was probably
Is
a
that just-
mistake. I don't know. I mean, Super Splash Car Wash was there the first time I ever came to Glen, so I couldn't say how that
Yeah.
happened.
But that's not something we would normally do, right? Is allow,
Yeah, we would normally not allow that.
extend it or not allow it to
Mhm.
happen.
Yeah, the code calls for it to be to the edge of your property for this exact
Oh, okay.
thing to not happen. Like theirs would be extended to the edge of their property. So if someone builds between them and the Shopco building, they wouldn't have to rip up their cement or their asphalt.
And
Makes a
so
lot
it's
more
currently
sense.
where?
in the middle of Shelby.
In the
In the
Right.
middle, in the middle? is what we're saying? Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
which is a valid point. Councilman Bowers.
And that's their frustration, right? Is because they know that it should have been.
So is that the
Someone
city's
else.
responsibility?
That's a utility question.
When you're saying it's the
It'll be-
developer,
It'll be Shelby's responsibility if he's expanding his car wash and wants to do a project. If it's not, then, I mean, we don't really have a definition of who the responsibility is. And that's where we could work with Lloyd, which is what
Yeah.
they're requesting, you know. That's what
I feel like that's
Lloyd says he'd like to
appropriate.
get
Yeah, I do
Preston
too.
to extend that.
I
It's
mean, I
something-
feel like when there's mistakes made that we don't have control over, which we don't, like, I mean, none of us have been here for 18 years at this table, like it wasn't this group. So I feel like, I mean, we can work with something to fix something and make it to where we can be. And
Yeah.
that's just my thoughts. One of my questions earlier was, is Emery running any of their lines through there at all?
I don't know, not yet. So I haven't seen plans for their next phase of work. So
I mean,
don't
because if
know.
they are,
Probably not right there
Okay.
because they've already done some of that work.
okay,
So I would guess no.
it might
They're on the poles.
be worth,
overhead there.
right, right.
It's probably, even if they did, it probably wouldn't happen in a timely manner for what they're
Right.
doing.
It might be worth.
I mean, that's where I think that Lloyd and Josh have gotten the idea of having the city help with that, is that I've told them, you know, that's a real possibility
Right,
where it's outside of your control, you
right.
know, being down in the middle of the adjacent property owners.
and I apologize, this is the first time I'm fully understanding that point, so if I misunderstood, I apologize, but I tend to agree that if this is a mistake that happened because of a decision that was made incorrectly years ago, it shouldn't be them that has to pay for that mistake either. Seems like the city should be helping that with that outside of a redevelopment
Yeah.
or development agreement.
The only
But it's not
caveat
on
is
the
we'd
agenda.
have to have the budget to do that. And
Or it's not a huge amount.
I mean,
right?
well, we don't
We're talking
know.
$5,000.
If it can be done that way.
Yeah, if it can be done that way, if like it mentions here, if the,
Is the water main also under the,
No, the
Oh,
water
okay.
main comes out.
Okay.
It's just a natural gas.
it's estimated 5,000 in this, that's why I was,
Yeah.
I would say even if you didn't want to follow like a specific CDA policy, which I'd probably still recommend, it would still be wise at the very minimum to have a development agreement in place. Yeah.
move forward with the develop, I'm saying
Okay.
this maybe shouldn't be addressed separately from the development agreement, because this is something that,
Or what I'm saying is, this is, the prior item was a development agreement kind of policy specific program. But even if maybe what you're doing with Sunrise Outfitters doesn't go with the policy program, it'd still be wise to have an established development agreement just to establish what the city's doing.
They know what to
they're-
expect. We know what to expect.
That's what
so
I'm
even if
saying.
we do something
Outside of
work
that
on this-
policy.
Right.
But that's
Just
up
have
to
an
your
agreement.
discretion. Do you
Just
want
gas
them to
line.
adhere to the policy or do you want to do something different? That's up to you.
What needs to be done to, I mean, is there any planning or anything that can go into it that would give us a good idea if this is gonna be able to happen with whatever missile? Yeah,
You told me. so
I mean,
I'll have you-
Yeah, so I mean, we can just do it. That's what council wants to do. We just get the gas line around. See what it takes.
I
I mean, is that what you're asking?
yeah. I mean, I'm asking, is there anything that can be done ahead of time to say, yeah, this is likely that we can do it, or is it always just
Oh, like preliminary to see.
we just go, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, we
Yeah.
go to
I
plan B.
mean, unfortunately.
I mean, because you don't know what's underneath there, and there's no way of really.
Yeah, so the nature of that equipment that we use, you know, just, we have a thing that is as long as my wingspan, longer with the air compressor hose hooked to it, you know, a big pointy deal. We put it in there, it's pneumatic, and it just hammers and goes. And so we have to have a hole big enough, we can set the whole assembly down in the ground. And then we hope that it doesn't go down or up or the wrong way, you know, and a rock can turn that. And so it's kind of a primitive directional boring, so to speak.
Well, you would also, are you all in city right of way easement, or would you also be on their private properties as well?
I'd have to look, you know,
You'd
it's
have to
UDOT right of way.
consider-
None of it's the city's right of way, right?
Right.
So
Oh,
it'd
good point,
either be
yeah.
UDOT or theirs, but you know, we have a sewer main that's, I can't remember where the property corners are, but that manhole's well on your side of the
And
property.
that's why I was saying at a minimum of development
Yeah.
agreement, so we just
So-
make sure.
We have utilities back on their property, certainly with the sewer, but the gas line's further, closer to the highway than the sewer.
So the water line's on the city property.
Right.
How deep is the footer for Super Splash's sign that you have to go under?
Well, it's not going under that. There's a, according to Sealy, there's a gap between the sidewalk and the footer. We tried on both sides, or between that sign and the footer. Talked to Preston, he'd rather try and go between the sign and the footer, because the footer's like 8 foot deep. We can't go underneath that footer. There's about a foot gap on both sides of that we'd have to get. And that's why.
That's why it's if it works.
The only really logical way to do it is to try and send that torpedo. If not, we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
And that's staff's
You
point
estimate
here is-
$5,000 using the torpedo?
Yeah.
Even to trial it, to test it?
And if it
I mean,
doesn't
those are
work,
soft
then-
costs. I
Yeah.
mean, in the sense that it's our guys, our labor. I mean, the hard cost really is cutting out some of the concrete and the
How
replacement.
many feet are we looking at going? So by the time we dig a hole, put the torpedo machine in, we're already halfway there.
No, we're going between 30 and 40 with the torpedo. Pretty close.
We don't, I had 60 in my head, but.
But
We don't cut.
yeah, we gotta cut about 5 foot section of concrete if it is.
Well, and as staff goes through the completed application and sees if there's anything else that they need, we'll have better ideas on costs and things, but the idea is at a
Unfortunately, It's
minimum.
not an action, it's only discuss, it's not a business item. So we can't even vote on it.
Well,
But we do have discretionary funds, the council does.
Well, I mean, I think where it's labor, just advice and consent, if you want,
That's
if you
what I
want the
was
city crew to get
I mean-
going on moving the gas. we can go.
Our guys are getting paid whether they're doing that project or they're doing another project. True?
I would say, yes, I agree with that. I don't want to do anything without an agreement done.
We're
Just,
just talking getting the gas line from the middle of someone's property with cement over it to the end of the property, nothing beyond that. They would be
well,
responsible.
what
from
happens
that
if it
point.
doesn't work?
Then we'll have to.
Then we'll
make
have to
another
bring it
plan.
back, yeah. This would just be giving them advice and consent to try the torpedo.
What's that?
I think we move forward with the commercial agreement before we do anything.
You can do a development agreement just for this though, right? So you don't have to do the CDA for this miscellaneous part. That can be just an agreement made in writing.
Why do
There's
you
probably a
want
template.
to have the agreement in place? I guess I feel like we're fixing an error that's not their
How do you know
fault.
what's the city's error? Maybe it was the business's error.
Maybe it was.
It's just, maybe it was the state's error because they let them put their driveway there, but still, it was somebody's error, not necessarily ours.
I'm sure Shelby did likely what he was told, and so, I don't know, I don't want them to be responsible to fix an error that we should be responsible for. It's our gas line.
Why are we responsible for it?
Because somebody is gonna, if they don't, somebody's gonna develop on that property at some point, and the line has to be fixed. It's in the wrong place and it has cement over it. That should have not have happened. It should have been
But I'm saying,
run all the way to the end of the property.
but I don't know that it's our error. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know who else error it could be,
It's our gas line, so I believe it is our.
other than if for some reason in the permit, Shelby didn't show running far enough or something, but I don't know
So
who
the
else fault it
benefit
can be.
of maybe doing an agreement would be in the agreement, you might say, for example, the city will do the missile and spend up to X number of dollars testing it. Anything beyond that that needs to be done is the responsibility of the developer. That might be something you'd put in the agreement. So we're coming to the table saying, hey, we'll try this, we'll do what we can, but if it goes above this, you guys got to cover those additional costs. That would be a benefit of the agreement. Little things like that, just to make sure what we think is coming in at $5,000, $7,000 worth of cost doesn't turn into $25,000 worth of cost that we certainly don't have budget for.
If we wait till there's
We can bring it up the next council.
How soon do they need the gas line?
yeah, I mean,
Well,
that's,
their application's not done and it's not approved, so they can't do that until it's approved anyways. And
how fast does this happen? Like, say we say, go ahead and do it. Is it done in a week? Is it done tomorrow?
Depends Preston's schedule. It couldn't be done tomorrow, which is because of blue stakes, that's a 48-hour, during the business week delay for sure.
Terry, what else is under there?
We have sewer, water and gas behind the curb there. I'm not sure if Shelby has some electrical that's his, to signs, that type of thing. Preston's worked on that a little bit with Lloyd for me, but I haven't been, I don't always get pulled into all the little details on that, so I'm not 100% certain.
How deep's the main, the sewer main?
Oh, it's deep. It's 10 feet approximately. So the sewer is pretty much a non-issue.
The thing that I'm wondering about is if things travel the path of least resistance. I'm just wondering what damage has been done to the ground there, or where that pneumatic torpedo is going to go.
Or come out.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the water line, if they follow Murphy's Law, so.
Well, knowing my luck,
If I
probably the
can
water
maybe
line.
make a recommendation based on the whole of the discussion, maybe what we can just do is at the next meeting, well, by the next meeting, which is March 8th, I believe, staff will have had time to look at things, see if they've got everything they need. And if we're comfortable and got everything that we need, then we can bring a proposed agreement, because I still need to talk to our city attorney too about helping put together an agreement and see what we can potentially have on the 8th. If we feel like, say, 5 days before the 8th, that it's just not coming together, then I can send an email to the council and say, hey, council, here's the status of this situation. Either way, whether it's going to move forward or not. Those are kind of my off the cuff thoughts. I don't know if council.
Mike,
prefers
so if
something.
we wait, some council members would be more comfortable if there was an agreement in place. If we wait for that, so you have to wait another, is it 3 weeks before our next meeting? What's that mean? Two, because it's a short month, huh? So if we wait for the next meeting, it's not going to hold up anything you're doing, is it?
But by then Shelby will have an idea on his permit as well, which plays into.
There is one other request in this paper that I think we should address, and that's removing the Waterhead gate.
Yeah.
That's on the city responsibility.
I think that's ours.
Agreed.
I went down and looked at it and
Agreed.
I guess, Terry, me as my council position is get crews on it and get it removed out of their way.
Okay. Get it done.
I second.
I stand.
Oh, we can't.
no.
Advice and consent.
Yeah, this is advice.
Sorry.
Is the body of the council okay?
Does it
with
make
that?
more sense to do it? I mean, I don't even know what it is, to be honest. Like, I have no idea.
It's not a big deal.
4 pieces of steel sticking in the air with 2 gates on it.
Can be out of there.
I'll direct
Great.
staff even to
Let's-
just go
let's do
take
that.
care of that.
Yeah.
And then we'll try to come back with something on the 8th, depending on where that's at, with the permitting, the attorney's feedback, stuff like that.
Well,
We'll try
so-
to get something.
And this
to you.
doesn't necessarily involve these guys, but it's been brought up about a permit for the car wash and that it would be their responsibility. So then
We'll
is this
try-
agreement even with them, or is this agreement with, let's figure that
Well,
out.
those are some of the things that we need to look at.
Cause I'm like, if we go in and do it now, tomorrow, we say, Terry, go do it. And then the permit for that gets done when they would normally have needed to do it. And now we just did it. And like, I feel like there needs to be more.
That's why for this option, the 8th does work, because Shelby, that could be rejected tomorrow per se, and Shelby could say, I'm not extending it, I'm not doing my project, and you'd be right back to square one. His could be approved, in which that would be noted in the permit, he can agree to it, and their problem. So
And I'm not saying,
there's a couple of scenarios, but that's why this time gives us the ability to say, CVs are gonna do it, they can do it together, or the city can do it.
right. And I'm not saying that I prefer CVs to do it, or I prefer
Yeah.
these guys. Like, I'm not saying I prefer someone over the other. I just am saying that the agreement might need to include more than just us. So I think it's fair to kind of make sure that all things are lined up before we say do it. Good? Are we good with that? Yeah, okay,
That was a hearty discussion, but a good one.
good. It's good to have.
Good
that.
face.
Okay, number 3, airport commercial policy.
Okay, Mayor and Council, so last council meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Last council meeting, we brought to you just like an example of some ordinance, and just trying to get a little bit of feedback here. We've refined that feedback a little bit more, presented. So maybe I should pull back a little bit. So basically, we found that most municipal airports had essentially 2 things. They had like a rules and regulation book, which were extremely lengthy, a lot of them, and they had some sort of basic ordinance. And what we decided to do here was put down a few high-level rules and regulations related to some of the rates that we discussed in the last meeting. And then a very simple example of what ordinance would look like. Spanish Fork Airport is the one that we modeled this after. And actually talking to our attorney, when I told him it was Spanish Fork, we modeled it after because he's had experience doing ordinances with municipal airports. He said Spanish Fork is an excellent example of one that's simple, highlights some main things. So in that ordinance, it identifies 13 different possible categories of commercial uses. It identifies basically definitions of, what words mean what in that ordinance. It's really simple. But before I'm going to go through the ordinance first, then we'll get back to the rates. So this ordinance, if you look on page, sorry, I want to look at, I'm trying to, if you look on page 41, so the first portions of the ordinance is the definitions and then some basic general provisions that most airports should have. And on page 41 is where it identifies specific commercial type activities. If you look at the fixed base operator section, obviously not all those things apply to us. I've just left that in there in this draft so you can see on most municipal airports what fixed base operators do. Right now, our fixed base operator essentially just does fuel, okay? And then these other 12 things are a handful of other types of potential commercial uses. And similar to what Pratt was saying with, I can't remember which item it was. It was the CDA. If you want to give me feedback after today too on some of these specific things, feel free to email me because this is a lot to take in right now. And if you have anything right now, that's great. So now I'm going to jump back to page 35, the rates portion. And I'm going to kind of speak with this in relation to our fixed base operator, our FBO. So right now our FBO essentially does the gas, and based on these rates, I'm just going to say this part up front, we would want to talk to our FBO about maybe amending their contract. So for example, if we're charging for tie downs and they're helping do that, we would want to give them a portion. So say, for example, 70-30, where they get 70 and we get 30, we'd want to negotiate that. So those are a couple things that we're looking to potentially add there. So here's some rates. I spoke to some pilots I knew outside, and I know the mayor did outside of the landing area. And similar to the council's reaction about the paying per landing, a couple of the pilots that I was speaking to said, hey, if there's an airport that charges per landing, I avoid that airport. And so we didn't even bother with that. And that was kind of the sentiment of the council anyways. Now, it might make sense, and I'm not saying we should do this, some airports who have a lot of flight schools and tons of flight trainings, they may charge the flight school a per landing cost because of the wear and tear on the runway that's more frequent than just pilots flying in. So with that out of the way, we found that with hangars, a lot of the municipalities we looked at charge anywhere between $500 and $1,000 a month. We only charge $100 a month. And talking to staff and given the condition of our hangars, we don't think we quite want to go up to 500. We think 300 is sufficient. And we don't even want to do that tomorrow or even next year. We want to incrementalize that over the next 5 years. And then maybe in 5 years, if there's improvements and things like that, the council at that time could decide how they want to go with hangar rental costs. Tie downs, one of the things that at least one of the pilots that I spoke to, he said, if someone comes and they need to stop for a couple hours, even half a day. You know, a lot of airports don't charge for that. He said, but for sure, if they're staying overnight, every airport charges for overnight tie downs, and then monthly and annual. And then lastly, parking vehicles. So if people need to park a vehicle for a day use, an overnight use, $15. And these are based on some of the different rates we saw in other airports and what we honestly felt was reasonable for our airport, which is lower than others.
Do we have an issue with parking though? I mean, is this
We
honestly?
don't have much.
We don't have much.
Because we don't have much area to park, is that what you're saying?
Exactly, yeah.
Oh,
And so,
So it potentially could be an issue.
yeah, so, you know, there
I
may
mean,
be
I've
someone
been
that's
out there, but I don't pay attention to
right.
how many parking spots
And
there are.
the idea too is that this isn't just about today, it's also about,
The future.
yeah, because we, like with the airport consultant, we're moving forward with our airport master plan and hopefully to eventually build like private hangars that are rented, which were some of the commercial uses identified in the ordinance. So we'd want to have these kind of things established. Now, for those who are leasing, I guess I should have maybe said this. We wouldn't want someone that's leasing a hangar to have a car there parked at all times, right? Potentially, I guess.
Some parked out on the apron, some cars.
Right, and so we want to be conscientious. So like some of the airports, what they did was if your car was parked like on the runway in an aircraft center line to get to the runway, any of those things, there's like $1,000 fine because you are in the way, you are impeding traffic. But if your car is just like parked where it's not supposed to be, whatever the scenario might be, it's only like $50. And then here's some other basic rates. But what we are recommending is $500 if they're egregious, like on the runway, $50 if it's just like not a parking spot. So like tie downs, for example, say someone's renting a monthly tie down and they come, well, what other airports would say is, okay, when you move your plane, you can park your car in your tie down space. If you have a hangar, when you move your plane out of the hangar, you can park your car parallel in front of your hangar door. And so that's where I'm saying leases is included. This doesn't mean that they have a car parked there year round all the time, if that makes sense. So anyways, those are some of the main highlights. I don't know if the council has questions.
So I like the idea of if we are gonna go with a new fee, which tie downs is a new fee, that will be increasing the workload of the FBO. And I do appreciate that you're recognizing that and saying that they would be able to glean a decent portion of the revenue for that.
Yeah, we all
For
staff
the
can say
increased
same thing.
workload.
Yeah.
But I also wonder if we couldn't set aside that money, this is just me being out there, but towards a nicer courtesy car, like an ongoing fund, so that we have something a little bit more upscale than
Yeah.
the old confiscated whatever car that we use.
So you're hitting the nail on the head. So all these costs, whether it's a nicer courtesy car or maintenance on the runway or updating our hangars, whatever, that's the idea is right now, we're not really collecting. I mean, yeah, $100 a month on the hangars, but essentially we're collecting nothing to maintain the airport.
Do we know what it costs to rent, say, or for those that are using them strictly for storage and not airplanes? What would it cost to rent the similar space?
Oh, thousands of dollars a month.
Yeah, so why, so if they don't have, if they're not leased to park an airplane, why aren't we charging them?
I think we've gone
Same
through
square
and
footage.
cleared those out.
We did do a new lease agreement. We do have a couple leases that we're working with, I'll phrase it that way, because they're not adhering or they haven't signed their lease or a couple little things like that. So we are working to take care of those ones, but most of them have been resolved. And so you're spot on. And in the new lease, we made it so that annually the city can go and do an inspection and make sure they're being properly used.
I just know that last round, when I was here 10 years ago, that there was majority of them didn't even have an airplane.
Right, agreed. And yeah, it would be thousands of dollars for a space like that every month to store stuff.
Well, a lot of people that I've talked to, because I've reached out to several pilots, and I mean, one of the main things that they talk about is gas prices. Our gas prices currently are higher than Moab's
Our gas prices?
at the airport. So no one's stopping to get gas. Eagle Air uses it, and that's their biggest seller or buyer, I guess. But when we have gas prices that are higher than Moab and a terminal that looks like it came straight out of the 60s, whatever, because it literally did.
Yeah.
Like,
So on the gas part, actually, if I can bring something up, Brett has mentioned this too. We have a situation where, and I'm really simplifying this, putting more in my layman's terms, where basically our tank, you can buy gas in units of 10,000 gallons, but our tank can only hold 8,000 gallons. So we're still paying the same price for 10 and only able to get 8, which might contribute to our gas prices. And what Brett has recommended to me is that we start planning for the future to get tanks that can actually hold the full.
and at one point we
amount.
were lower. We were lower at one point and we've gone up.
Yeah,
So I don't know
right,
what the
exactly.
reasoning behind that is, but that's what they say is they won't stop if gas is
And that's what
cheaper somewhere else.
that's what my contact had said too. If one's, maybe your contact said the same thing. Pilots are done. If it's cheap or if it costs more money, we're going to fly clear out of our way to go somewhere else to get cheaper gas or not have to pay landing fees. Sorry.
Why 10,000 gallons? What is the number?
It's just what the seller of the gasoline,
It's
they
like
sell
the
it in
industry
that
standard.
specific units. Yeah, they sell them in 10,000 gallons. And our tanks, because of the
I
design.
live in the fuel transportation business. You cannot haul 10,000 gallons on most loads without being a train.
Yes, I don't think that's accurate.
I don't, yeah.
Brett,
I was looking
It may
into
be
you wanna-
it may be our quantities that we're purchasing, but the trucks don't hold that.
Oh, I'm not talking about the trucks themselves. I'm talking about, well, and maybe Brett can clarify, but my understanding is, yeah, that the number that they'll sell in is 10,000 and ours only hold 8. And so there's some nuances. And obviously, like I said, I'm the layman in it, but that's contributing to the issues
To a
with the
higher
gas.
price.
Which probably doesn't really like apply to the policy, how many gallons of gas. I only brought that up because I'm saying
That's
some
something
of these fees that we could collect, maybe we could use to put some paint on the walls or maybe have a rug or something, I don't know.
And Brett will have something more in the future regarding funding that's potentially coming for the airport and some other things.
So
that
I
we
think
can discuss
specifically
later.
for us tonight, we need to say, and I think maybe we can do this through, share this with us and make some edits. Because there is a lot of things that applies and definitions are fine to have for me. Like, I think that it spells things out if we were to ever have issues. But we can also send our recommendations that way.
Yeah, that's what I think. Look at it, see if there's specific things. Like I said, in the FBO section, I'm going to strip some things out. But if you think maybe, because it says gasoline services, but I'm thinking of putting something generic in there or like something like other services as per FBO agreement, something general so that the FBO can have capacity to do more. But yeah, I think that would be helpful. I guess my biggest question for tonight is, do these fee recommendations look okay to you? And if not, we can change it, or maybe you want to think on that too and send feedback later.
I do like the idea of incrementally increasing the hangar revenue because I think it's reasonable. But it's not reasonable to say next year it's 300
Yeah,
Right.
right.
when for the last 20 years it's been.
Does the council feel like 300 is enough, too
Yes.
much?
I feel
That's
like
hard to say. Because, but we
Well, I
know,
think it also goes back to the demand of it.
that's
Like,
what I
if
was
we're
gonna
not,
say. We know
have
the
a pretty good
demand
demand.
and we know that there's a waiting list. And so maybe we need to just keep increasing until we feel like we've met the proper threshold of supply and demand.
So originally I did have 500, up to 500 in 5 years. But as Kim and I talked about it, we talked about the condition of the hangars, but now I'm almost countering my change again of there is a demand. I mean, I think it was the day we were putting together this packet, we had 2 different individuals call or come in and say, hey, where am I on that list? I need, and we're like, oh, you're 7 and you're 10 on the list, these 2 different individuals. And so there is a demand. And so are we shortchanging ourselves? I don't want to run out
But we-
current tenants.
Right,
That's the
I mean,
thing.
people
I
that have
wanna be
been there and that have
respectful
been
of
good
that. So
partners and
we were
good.
trying to find a balance in it.
And that we
Sorry.
absolutely need to do that. We need to not come across as
Pay up or
Greedy.
yeah, right, yeah.
Well, I feel like if we ever were to add hangars, if we built hangars next year, which I'm not saying it's in our plan or whatever, but we would start those at 300 because that, but these
Right.
people that have been in there and we're raising it and they're not leaving, or if someone were to leave and we were to bring someone else in, maybe start them at 300 because that's where we are.
Or
But these ones that
maybe-
have been there forever,
Mhm.
we get them to where we want to be slowly.
Or maybe if private hangars were built that we did a development agreement with, and they're charging $1,000 a month, we might say, oh, we're gonna bring ours at least to 800 a month or something like that. So I think I'm comfortable with where these rates are on these various recommendations. And those can always change. And the idea is that this is the administrative policy that you're approving to coincide with the ordinance. So administrative policy can be much more easily changed, which is always smarter to have rates and administrative policy than ordinance. So
Are there people out there that are interested in maybe entering an agreement to build a private hangar on our property?
we've talked to people. Yes, there is interest in there.
So what kind of space do we have?
That was the
That's-
question that I was asked,
so
and I don't know.
So the master plan that Brett's been working on from the airport consultants will identify a lot of that. So we'll bring that to the council at a future time.
And I've talked about this before, like when we decided to do the visitor center updated signs, we have to do something at the airport so that it's not so hideous.
You mean signage and.
Yes,
The banners and that.
Yes.
I've got that on my
Okay.
proposed budget. Kim just has, I've got till March 4th.
I appreciate that you're thinking about it because we are an awesome city and our terminal building does not
Well,
reflect
I mean,
that.
we've talked about this before and beaten it almost to death, and maybe we're
Yeah.
doing the same tonight, but we've talked about what we want the city to look like when people are driving in. Well, we do have pilots that they don't drive in, they fly in, and that's what they get is
And most
is our
people that are
terminal
flying
building.
are a little more, I mean, they have a little more money to spend, and so. we
Well, not
wanna
only
make sure-
that, like there's places, like I've flown with some pilot friends and we go to just some of these little FBOs and they roll out a red carpet when you get there. Like it's kind of like tacky and whatever. And they bring you cans of soda and they have a bucket of M&Ms that you all share and
Everybody take your hand.
but everyone loves it.
With a sign that says COVID fresh.
And ours are just, please clean the cobwebs, like.
So one of the unintended benefits of the hailstorm is we're getting some stuff like new gutters on our hangars, a new roof on the terminal, those types of things that are going to be paid for through the insurance. So there are little maintenance things that are going to be done that should be paid for. And then, like Pratt said, working on signage and stuff. So I think eat the elephant one bite at a time, and that's kind of where we're heading. But as long as we're moving forward consistent is what I'd like to see. So
I think with tie downs, I think the overnight fees seems a little high for one night.
okay.
I love the monthly and I love the annually. I think that's great.
So
But
what do you think?
if that's,
$10?
if our gas prices are determined, I was thinking 10.
Okay, because I had mentioned 5 to the pilots that I spoke to, and they're like, oh no, that's way too low. So I put 15.
And then parking, I just don't know how you would ever police that.
Well,
If someone calls and says, can I park my vehicle here for a month? Then you say, yeah, there's a $50 fee.
Well,
Then
what you do is, so for example, someone that's monthly or annually, you'd give them a window sticker. And then someone that's like daily, you do like national parks, here, put this in your dash.
So this is something that we would also be asking the
Exactly.
FBO to enforce.
Yeah, and that's why I feel it's important to have a discussion with the FBO, but first I want to have the discussion with you to say, hey, is this something you're interested in? And then I can talk to the FBO and say, hey, these are some of the things we're thinking. Do you have the capacity to do that? Is that of interest to you? And if not, then I got to come back to you as a council and say, hey, if you still want to do this, we've got to figure out how to staff that. So.
I don't know about parking.
I think it's moving in the right direction.
I'm
though.
still the same with parking. Like I see that it could be good, but I think that, I mean, I don't know if we have people saying, can I park here?
They just do
But
it.
then I also am like, if we're driving people away with high gas prices and more fees, are we driving more people? But they're not
So-
literally driving there, so I don't know.
With regard to parking, both pilots and municipal airports told me parking is where most airports make their consistent money.
And it's infuriating
So-
when you check out and have an $80 parking bill,
Yeah,
but you
well,
have to do it.
But your
hopefully
commercial
we
flights.
wouldn't have that
And you're a lot
here,
of commercial
an
flights. though,
$80
too.
No, that's
parking
a-
bill, but,
Like at Moab or Cortez, you have this huge parking bill. It makes me so.
oh wait, when you were talking overnight, you were talking
I
parking,
was
not tie
No,
down?
tie downs, I
downs.
think was a little high
Tie
by
downs.
10.
Okay,
But parking, I think 15 is high for overnight.
so
think
you
that's higher
think
than
10 as well there
Moab.
too, or 5? What do you think on the overnight parking? Maybe, you know, I'll look at Moab, what they do.
idea.
I'll look at Moab and
I
see
think
from
15
there.
is higher than Moab.
Okay.
I mean, in Cortez.
Sorry, Councilmember Grover, did you?
I'm looking at the airport on Google Earth right now.
Beautiful.
Where are we allowing people to park? Because
So,
we have about 30 parking stalls outside the airport fence.
so yeah, there's parking stalls there. And then like we mentioned, so if someone has a tie down, they could park in the tie down space or they can park parallel in front of their hangar door.
Okay, this picture that I'm seeing has about 10 cars parked north of the big hangar,
That would
Between-
probably
Inside the
be
fence?
guardian.
between the fuel tanks and the building.
That's
Wow.
probably, is that guardian staff, you think?
Well, why are they inside the,
They should be on the outside. of
I
the
mean,
fence.
that's the thing that we talk about parking them inside the airport. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, there's a couple cars that were just, I went with
Yeah.
Brett, with the right, yeah, they're just parked inside.
Yeah, I mean, technically, they should be parking on the outside fence, and that's where we would be charging for the parking. Well, I don't know. Let me talk to staff about it. Why don't we come up with some
Because you've
ideas? I
got
think
a-
you guys bring up some good points.
Like,
Sorry.
is Guardian given a certain number of parking spots since they have a business there, or are we
Is
suddenly charging them for coming to
probably
work?
got tired.
Brett, do you know if Guardian has a set number of parking spaces or anything?
I don't think they have a set number, but they utilize the spaces from the gate to the east, the electronic gate for
On
their
the out-
business. And
On the outside of the fence?
on the outside of the fence. And then
Who
because they
park-
have more employees down there, they have started parking on the inside of the fence, on the
Okay.
east side of the gate. And I've observed that, and I feel that they're being responsible where they're parking there. And that does allow them about 5 or 6 more spaces in there, as well as they have several company vehicles that they park in there. And they have felt pretty comfortable in some of the mechanics down there work on their own vehicles, and they have some of those that Mr. Grover's mentioned between the Guardian Flight building and the fuel tanks up there that they park along that side. And since they no longer take care of the fuel truck, Sealy's, our airport FBO has moved that over close to the west terminal building. And so they have some of their personal vehicles or trailers parked along that east side of our asphalt apron over there.
So personally, unless Brett says differently, if we have designated parking spaces, whether it's inside or outside, I think it's okay if this is designated parking spots for them. One thing actually that Brett just made me think of that I didn't put in here and I wanted to ask the council. So there's parking for vehicles, but a lot of the municipal airports also had parking for their trailers if they were like, say they pull the plane there on location or something like that. And so I didn't know if council wanted me to incorporate that in there. I don't know that we have a ton of that, but it sounds like we have some of it. But is the council okay with the parking as long as they're in designated spots, whether it's in the fence or out of the fence?
So I think
What's
it should be
sentiment?
parking their personal vehicles that they're doing work on? Or
No,
are we
sir.
talking about RV trailers? What kind of?
I don't know.
trailers?
So Brett, are you saying Guardian or others are doing mechanical work on their personal vehicles inside the airport fence? 'Cause
They do
that's-
mechanic work inside their hangar. I don't know what arrangement they have with their employer on nights or weekends, but that's,
In-
I thought they were like leaving a car there for 30 days. while
Yeah,
they-
Guardian Flight can do what they feel is necessary in their hangar, but out on the
Probably
parking,
okay.
on the asphalt's different. Okay,
They
thanks,
need to have
Brett.
enough spots. There is not enough parking.
Well, that's- So I think $5 a night's probably good for the parking then. Any other feedback from council?
If you'll send this out, I'll give you, I think there's too much information in here, even if I know you tried to cut it down, but I'll give you my input over. email.
Yeah, sure. And I tried to keep the rates on just this one
Yeah, that
page.
was awesome.
But what the majority of the ordinance really is definitions and general provisions. The section on the 13 different commercial things, it's not as long as the definitions and general provisions.
So you asked for things like their financial information.
but I'm
I just
saying
don't know
the
if we're
same
there yet.
condition.
Yeah. That's right.
Genetics.
Oh, I got you.
Anyway, thanks for getting it to us.
Okay.
All right, okay, we good with airport? Kind of, we have a plan for the airport. All right, wellness center, shower and fire suppression system.
I'm so tired.
Can we just not talk
Oh,
about this?
gosh.
Can we talk
I'm not-
about it next
I was
time?
confused. I thought we were already in the business items.
Nope,
Yes, so
not
let me
yet.
give you the short and skinny of this, because we all know the background. Essentially, both the architect for the showers and who's a subsidiary of Jones and DeMille, and Johnson Controls with the sprinkler says, just do the design work first and then figure out, and then once you've got the design work, then you can start figuring out when you want to do the whole rest of the work and how you're going to fund it and all that. So to do the design work for the showers, I believe is, let me look here. It's 8,600, or I'm sorry, 7,400 for the showers and 8,600 on the design for the fire suppression system. So $16,000 total. Now, the main thing is administratively, and Kim reminded me of this, I can approve to go do that design work right now. It's not budgeted for, but we believe we can find it within the existing budget without having to amend the budget. If that is not the case, we'll come back and let you know, but we believe it is. And so with your advice and consent, even though administratively I can go and do it, I wanted to get your advice and consent because this has been such an important issue. So I'm gonna make sure you're okay with myself and staff moving forward to get the design work on these two things.
Yes.
I am.
Okay. And we really need the shower design work done first, so then we can see how that impacts the sprinkler design work. So that.
you mean we don't want to do sprinklers and then add showers and have to do sprinklers again?
Why do we have to have a design price for both? Why can't they just do it together?
Because they're different
Because they're different
specialties.
They're in
More
different
money?
specialties. No, they're just different specialties. I mean, Johnson Controls specializes in the design of fire suppression, and the Kim Campbell is the architect. He specializes in building designs and stuff. So.
So, and we can, I mean, you kind of mentioned it here, but we can probably pull this from the money that we've had budgeted for recreation.
Yes, we have.
So we'll just take it where we didn't do the pavilion, we'll just reallocate that pavilion money to the design work for this project.
Okay. All right, are we good to get a
Get that
design?
design done.
Oh, that's the fastest wellness center conversation we've had all year.
But now you gotta get the design done. So let's get the design done ASAP. So we can
Yes,
make a decision.
agreed.
Get fire suppression system in there.
All right, business items. So this first one is renewal of the contract for airport grant process. This is Dave.
So I'm filling in for Brett, but Brett's on. So Brett, do you want to go over this? Because I wasn't sure if Brett was going to be able to get on.
We're on page 50.
Oh, Brett, can you hear? Do I need to?
He's muted. Unmute, Brett.
Bueller?
Here we
can
go.
you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so which airport contract are we talking about there, Dave?
It's the renewal of the contract for the airport
The
grant
grant
process.
Okay, so the FAA, the federal government, is they want everything in triplicate and duplicate and all that stuff, but to try to finalize and speed up that process, they have set up an electronic signature for the mayor and for the city attorney to help facilitate that process.
Receive.
Because they have to have that in place before they can award funding to the airport. And so I know it was a little confusing to you, Logan, to get that just out of the blue, but this is something that Dave and I have been working on ever since we knew that we were going to have a different mayor and a different city attorney. So
Will you explain, Brett, will you explain how there's not necessarily a set grant amount and what they're estimating that will be, and why that is?
So this is still money under the COVID process. There's a possibility of up to a total of maybe 3 different grants that we can get. And it's for general operation and maintenance at the airport, but they're kind of somewhat specific on what they'll allow us to spend that money on. We did get one $20,000 grant last year, and we have an opportunity to get another one right now. That's the signature that we need Logan and our new city attorney to do after the city attorney's reviewed it, to make sure the contract, and it's their boilerplate FAA contract. It basically says that that money can only be used for airport purposes. And it's funneled to the state of Utah, and then the state aeronautics division then gives the grant to us from the federal government. And so we've got to have all our paperwork in place to do that. And it's going to be around $20,000. It might just be a little bit over 20,000, or it might be under a little bit of 20,000, 19,000, some $100. And they work
What are you
that
gonna
all
use it
out.
for,
Well, we're
What are you
going
planning
to
to use it for?
we're somewhat limited in what we can use it for, but we can use it for general maintenance. So we could pay wages, we could do some repairs like Katie's talked about on that West Terminal building on the inside. Dave and I have
Yes.
talked back and forth about that to fix the ceiling
Make the bathrooms nicer.
and do a paint job.
Yeah.
Cool.
Some of that
So-
stuff, we'll have to explore that, but it has to be used on the airport, and it has several different categories you can use it for. We probably can't use it on our fuel system. We can't use it to build new hangars, but we could use it for general repairs or wages or other things like that to keep the airport operating.
Kind of where all this came from, just so within that, I got an email and it said it was from the FAA or whatever, and then it asked for my signature. And within it, it said something about like signing this is saying that you have the governing body's consent. And so I'm like, well, that's not me, that's you guys. So that's why we've kind of talked about this, and we're asking if you are okay with me signing
And
this.
generally
Yeah.
speaking, even when we receive grants, I like best practice to take it to the council so you're aware to say.
That way everyone
We
knows.
want to spend on that field.
So do you need a motion?
I
Yes.
feel like it would be.
I make a motion that we renew the contract for the airport grant process.
Okay, so we have a motion from Council Member Perkins and a second from Council Member Grover. All in favor?
Aye.
That is everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brett.
This next one is just, oh, it's not in here. So appointment of a county health board member. So within the bylaws of the San Juan County Public Health, the city has a spot on that board. Katie served on it for a while. I don't know how many years, but and then I took over on that under the assignments, and I kind of just wanted to make it so it was someone in the community that would show up to meetings, basically. So we put that out for to see who was interested. We had a couple people apply and both were great. kind of how their bylaws are written are really weird. They just have like, well, actually it's state code that says that you can only have a certain amount of healthcare professionals. And then it kind of spells out what that means as far as like doctors, nurses,
Oh, really?
therapists and things on the board at one time. And they have just appointed a PA to fill one of the spots for Monument Valley. So that kind of limited us to who we could pick. Both of them that applied were super awesome, but I have decided to appoint Trent Herring as the board member that will represent Blanding. He'll finish out the rest of the term, which is 3 years. He works there at the hospital. So I don't think we need a motion on this, more just advice and consent to,
So even though he works at the hospital, he's not a healthcare.
yeah, he's
professional in his
administrative.
position, Yeah, so.
Put him on.
And I've talked to both of them and I would like to get both of them back on. So it was Trent Herring and then Corinne Johnson. Dave's wife was the other one and she's,
Oh, I was gonna
she's-
actually mention that as conflict of interest in the beginning. Then my wife had applied, so, but I,
and both are great and both are interested.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I actually told the mayor, please don't.
It's
leave
not
it
your
loose.
vote. We can move on.
Right.
So we'll move forward with that. He'll serve that term
Great.
for us. The next
So it's nice
one,
that she applied,
yeah, and yeah,
that people care, yeah.
there is some other stuff coming up that they will consider people that have applied for other spots as well, so we could get more representation. The next one, number 3, is this resolution for a youth council. I've been working on this for a while. It doesn't, so basically just to establish a youth council, it's you have a resolution saying, you know, we support this. It doesn't really include us. They might bring them in at times to kind of learn the process and things. But really what our youth council will do is they will work with the youth coalition, San Juan Youth Coalition, which includes different communities. So we would get kids that work specifically with the Blanding part of the San Juan Youth Coalition. Lynn Mitchell kind of does a lot of that stuff. And so I talked to her and we kind of figured it wasn't worth having a separate youth council and a youth coalition. Their meetings kind of would be the same thing. They would help with city events. That this just makes it sound nice and makes it official, I guess.
Yeah. I make a motion, we approve resolution 0222-2022-1 for a youth council, establishing a youth council. Holy
Put those
cow.
zeros in there. Just
We
needs
should
to
have
just
put
be all
dash
twos.
2 on there.
Yeah, we should have made it dash two.
I know.
I'll second that.
All right, so have a motion by Councilmember Bowers and a second by Councilmember Gosser. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's everyone. Next one is our resolution 222-2022-2, the DWR contract.
Hey there.
All right.
I didn't quite get that. Can you do it one more time?
No.
3 weeks ago, I was advised to send this contract back for revisions. And if you'll look under section 4 of the city will, the changes that were made, the 5th bullet point or the 5th one is now number 2. And number 2 said that we were gonna assume responsibility for all structures in the project area. That was where some of the heartache came, because we don't want to assume responsibility of all the structures. We want to assume responsibility for one single structure. So that was made and they've returned that. So that clarification was made.
No, although maybe
Any-
positive thing if we assumed responsibility of the bathrooms there, because they're a little sketchy there.
We did assume.
No, we didn't.
No, we didn't.
That's what our contract was. That was the adjustments, to make sure that we weren't responsible for those.
Councilmember Grover was clear to point that out.
Any questions on the resolution?
There are still things here that I addressed last time that are not true and correct.
I need you to clarify those.
They're still stocking the dock.
Well,
And number 3, item 2, they're still stocking the project. The project is the dock in this document. stock the project. How are you gonna stock fish in this dock?
I think with things that we changed, you're still reading into that more than needs to be read into. With the changes made, that is the lake. Because number 2, sorry, is where that issue came, is that we were going to assume responsibility for all of the project and the project.
The city
structures.
has the authority and administration to operate the project, manages the area for irrigation and recreational activities. We do not.
So 3 says DWR will stop.
In number 2, the city has authority for the administration and operation of the project and manages the area for irrigation and recreational activities. The desire to create and maintain fish and recreational facilities at the project. The only part of this project is this dock that the city is responsible for.
Okay, so let's do 2 things here. 3 doesn't matter because that's DWR's responsibility. So we
And
don't
it's
care what
just
they
boilerplate.
say.
Okay, but we do not have the authority of anything on that reservoir. If it's our responsibility, we don't have the time for our police force to be up there policing whatever's going on up there.
That's just a
But
statement
that's
saying that we
not
have
what this is
authority for
saying.
them to put the dock in place. We
Yes,
we have
that's
the
not what it
authority.
says.
It is, that's the way I read it.
Section 3 is completely
It's
DWR's
I'm not talking
responsibility.
section
We have the
3.
authority to approve the dock to go into place. That's the way I read that, but.
Yeah, and when it says the project, it's referring to the dock.
He
And then-
already said the
So
dock
say-
referred to the whole thing.
No,
Or the
that
project
was
referred to the whole
clarification. I need you to point one more time where you're reading.
Statement of mutual interests and benefits,
The
number
second
2,
paragraph
second
in section
paragraph.
2.
Okay.
And I think that that's just boilerplate for wildlife resources to get involved in
This
any
is-
project.
That we have authority.
Yes, this is sent to every other city that they've ever done anything with. The city has authority for the administration and operation of the project, and manages the area for irrigation, recreational activities. I guess you could say we don't do that, but at the same time, we do.
And then
have-
item
we do
number,
have ownership in irrigation and some of those things. We
you
have.
have ownership in irrigation. We do not have ownership in the reservoir. All we have is share interest in the water that's there.
Okay,
So basically, what the DWR is wanting us to take some financial obligation if something goes bad.
I don't read it that
I don't
way.
read it that
And
way.
then if you look at number 4, the city will provide notice if there's a need to draw the water level down below the minimum pool. The city has no control over that. That's the Water Conservancy.
But that's fine. We have a representative on the Conservancy District that would tell us, and I would say, hey, Cal, the Conservancy District has notified me that they're going to do X. That's all that's asking me to do is send an email,
Yep.
because he may not have their information. I don't think is for up to date. I'm happy to send it back again, if the resolution doesn't pass for that other paragraph, because
It's gonna pass.
guess.
And I'll probably vote for it, but you're not understanding what I'm saying. These guys are trying to do more than they have power to do, to say.
I think I understand what you're saying. I think we disagree on what you're saying.
All right, any questions?
That's what you're saying here.
Planning City does own some land around the. It's all BLM, the whole
BLM
thing.
and
The
private
land around.
is
the-
BLM and private.
And we own
Maybe
water
with our
shares
Sylvester
within.
We can talk them to give us it. through our
I
Sylvester.
make a motion to adopt resolution 2022-2, the DWR contract.
I will second it.
All right, that's a motion by Councilmember Perkins and a second by Councilmember Bowers. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
Hey, you said you're gonna vote for it.
I said maybe.
All right, for the record, Councilmember Gosser, Bowers, Perkins, and Nelson were a yes, and Councilmember Grover was no. Resolution 2-22-2022-3, Division of Drinking Water Principal Forgiveness Agreement.
Hey, Mayor and Council, you've seen the staff report and the draft resolution. This is the Westwater project. This is for consulting engineering services. The funding is coming through Division of Drinking Water, similar to the grant and resolution that we passed here. I don't know if it's been more than a month ago on the water master plan. This is the exact same funding mechanism, you know,
And source.
and source, and it's post-performance, you know, I mean, that's kind of where it's loan, not grant. It's 100% principal forgiveness, so we don't pay back the loan. We put the money out and then they reimburse us. Similar to that other grant.
But we do go for a loan essentially first. We don't dip into our own capital reserves to make it happen, or do we?
No, we dip into our capital reserves to make it happen.
Yeah, this is just a reimbursement. It acts as.
Yeah, we budget for it, so.
Okay. And how long is the reimbursement process though?
It's completed, right?
It's fast.
It's
No,
quick,
no,
it's
we
not
can do
drawn out?
partials.
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
So,
okay.
so as we incur costs,
you submit a reimbursement.
once monthly.
Okay.
They don't wanna do it.
What are we gonna use the $340,000 for?
To design deep well, arsenic treatment, master meter for the wholesale of water to NTUA, that project.
So essentially, last year, when the council directed staff figure out a way to get a deep well, this is helping fund all the engineering and design work for that, and it, you know, has other
It
benefits.
does.
For engineering design
Just for
work.
design.
It's a lot
Seems
of
like we
money.
should dig a quarter of a well with that amount.
Yeah. Well, so the estimated cost, this price tag is based off of just, you know, general, this is how much it takes to engineer a project, and the cost estimate is just under 5.7 million. So.
And that's just the water.
Good.
Yeah,
Have we looked at the paperwork from the other 3 wells we drilled? And the studies that were done on those wells?
Well, no, we haven't started this process yet. But
That's
we
what this is
will.
for.
That'll be part of the design process. We'll utilize that. If I understand your question correctly.
I think you do.
Okay, any other questions for Terry or anyone really on that?
It has to be all used for the design and engineering.
Yeah, this was specifically, so this is
Set
where,
aside
this
for
is,
that.
yeah, this is where when we came down with the Lieutenant Governor's office and the Division of Drinking.
and their board approved it. for
Yeah,
this
yeah,
specific
so this is kind of just one of these steps in all of this happening.
Seems like a lot, that.
A lot. So next step, you know, will be consultant engineering services, contracts and stuff, and we're working on that. So.
And they, I mean, anytime I talk to the Lieutenant Governor's office, they're very committed to this still. I mean, there's been hurdles.
We talked about the sell of water, how much we're charging for that water.
That's one of the next steps that will
Not
come.
yet.
Where right now,
But they do know that that's something that we've talked about.
the city attorney is currently reviewing a water conveyance agreement, and we'll make recommendations on that, but that'll come to council in the near future.
And part of this consultant services agreement too, that'll be part of the scope of work to help us with some of the things that they have in a draft agreement. Some of the services NQA wants us to provide as a wholesaler to them. Some of it's kind of, anyway, yeah, they'll help put some of that
So
together.
sorry, I'm a little confused. So I thought this was for us to drill another well for the city of Blanding.
Well, this is part
For
of
us
it.
to
So
design. drilling.
Sorry, for the design of the city of Blanding to drill another well in the future when we can find funding.
No, they
But this
will.
is for,
This is part of
this is
the-
in conjunction of.
but are we drilling this well for Westwater? Or are we drilling this
No,
well for
this-
Blanding?
This
So
well
kind
is
of
for
what-
us, and
Yes.
then when we bring that water conveyance
Yeah.
agreement, the idea is that because if they dug their own well and they'd have to create their own treatment facility, et cetera, et cetera. And so the council had told us as staff, find funding in a way to get another deep well. So essentially what the state said, okay, we'll fund your deep well. We'll fund upgrades to your treatment facility. And then we'll fund infrastructure like a master meter, and then you can come up with an agreement of selling water to them.
But they'll be using water from this
Our
deep well.
That's, well,
Well, if we
In general,
use the
We
well,
wouldn't,
in general, we'll sell water to them, and this is a resource for us that we can utilize for that if need be. So we'll sell water to them from our system as a whole. And if we have to utilize this deep well, we would. Same with all of our systems. We don't necessarily, when we sell water to one entity or resident, we don't necessarily say, hey, this well is only for these residents or this.
right, but they're
commercial.
not inside city limits, so it
right,
just
so that's
changed
why we
that.
sell it.
No, I did not know we were selling our own water.
We're selling our lifeblood to the state.
That is our
of
own
Utah.
resource. I thought they were digging their own wells.
They would.
So that's not true?
No, that's changed to some extent. So, yeah, that's what's been pushed.
So
is
basically
that-
what the state said is, well, instead of funding a deep well just for Blanding and a deep well just for Westwater, it makes more sense and there's more benefit for the broader community if we dig a deep well for Blanding, and Blanding can sell water to NTUA, the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority, at a rate that we set.
And if we're digging a well that they're gonna use and pay for the cost of operating that well to service them, I think that's what I understood. I didn't understand that but basically we're gonna pull water from that well. It's gonna go through our treatment system and they're gonna pay for that cost and come back out.
Yeah,
We're not
exactly.
pulling from our reservoirs.
Right.
No, we would be.
We
Yeah.
could be,
Will.
but we will have another well.
We'll have another well if we need access to it for running low.
Yeah, so if you remember.
That's the idea.
When council approved the changes to our policy to allow us to wholesale water outside of city limits, council determined that that entity or developer needed to bring a new water resource.
Right.
And so that's what this is.
Okay, and I guess I understood. I thought the city of Blanding was getting a well and they were getting a well. So
No.
that's where my
So
biggest confusion.
Yeah,
came.
basically they're saying, hey, the state is partnering with NTUA to bring us a new water source to fulfill that requirement by the city in order to wholesale them water.
Where are they getting the diversion point from?
So that has yet to be determined as well on the water rights, and that's a whole nother discussion, but basically there's several alternatives. One, we have a whole bunch of underground water well right that's not yet proved up on because we haven't developed the resources, so we could use our own water rights. Another alternative would be to just apply for a new water right for this well. Another one would be for the Navajo Nation to give the city water rights. The problem with that, I think everyone's aware that there was a Navajo water rights settlement with the state of Utah, and you might have heard of that, and that's kind of been settled, but it hasn't been adjudicated. And so the Navajo Nation can't technically transfer any water rights to Blanding City for a couple of years and until their water rights are adjudicated. And that's part of the whole Utah water law thing, which is.
So they're working with the Conservancy District essentially to get us additional water rights. And we may simultaneously, this isn't decided yet, we may simultaneously ask for even more additional water rights from the
So
Conservancy District.
that's a fourth option.
Yeah, we'll probably, there's a potential we could do a joint ask from the Conservancy District to cover all the water rights. So.
You know, there's 21 existing residences out there now, and that property is divided into 29 potential building lots. So, you know, there's not a lot of ability for growth there, and the water use is pretty limited. But I mean, do expect to see that. You know, this is a project that we're working on.
In conjunction with the power project.
Yeah, the NTUA side, you know, the distribution to each of the homes and everything, they're hoping to be able to have water to those people out there by mid 2023. And so it's a somewhat aggressive project. It's more aggressive for us than it is for them to complete all the work that we need to do. So
which is why they're funding it.
yeah, as this thing gets moving, I'll put that on my project status report, and so that we get monthly updates on where things are going. there's a lot of approvals with the wholesale water sales contract. That, you know, that's gonna be a big one that we're working through, and so.
Okay, any other questions for Terry? All right, it would take a
We need
motion.
a motion to accept it.
Yes, yeah.
This is just to get that initial grant to do the design and engineering.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2-22-22-3, the Division of Drinking Water Principal Forgiveness Agreement.
I'll second it.
All right, I have a motion by Councilmember Perkins and a second by Councilmember Bowers. All in favor?
Aye.
Nope.
All opposed. So that is Councilmember Perkins, Bowers, Nelson, and Gosser are for. Councilmember Grover is opposed. I do have a need to have a quick closed session for the purpose of legal.
I make a motion that we leave regular session and enter into closed session.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Second.
It was, oh, sorry, it was Councilmember Perkins and Councilmember Nelson. And everyone voted for it. Okay, we'll do it quick.
Okay, let me just shut everything down.
I need your lovelies.